Hello everyone, it's Old Guardian here. In this video I'm going to take a look at the top 15 best Hearthstone decks after the introduction of E.T.C Band Manager into the game, and there's a couple of E.T.C decks in this video as well. Generally about the meta, there's been maybe less innovation so far than I had hoped for. There are some changes here and there's a couple of spicy newer lists, but overall many of the decks that were great 1 week ago are still great. These 15 decks include decks from all but 2 classes. The only classes that are not represented here are Shaman. Shaman is very dead, and Rogue. Rogue is not good in the general ladder. There are some people who are saying that Miracle Rogue is like the best deck in the game. Miracle Rogue has a niche. Miracle Rogue is good in very high legend, where there's very specific meta going on right now, where Miracle Rogue is very favorable against that meta, but Miracle Rogue has tons of weaknesses in its current iteration, and it is not suitable for general ladder play. So now that that is clear, let's go take a look at the 15 best decks in the game to climb all the way to legend. And at number 15 we have Blood Death Knight. Blood Death Knight is only slightly above 50% win rate, but this is a very intriguing looking list. You may have seen Otsuna's Reno Blood Death Knight at 30 cards, but this is Cepho's 40 card Reno Blood Death Knight running E.T.C Band Manager. E.T.C Band Manager in general looks to be very good in slower decks, and in this one the band is Sunwell, Theotar and Coroner. Coroner is a tech card, it's a flex spot, and this is just, it has the health, it has the defensive tools that it can just do surprisingly well sometimes in the current meta against some of these most aggressive decks, but it also does have a bunch of weaknesses. So overall, Blood Death Knight is more popular than it should be. Blood Death Knight is one of the more popular archetypes in the game still, even though it doesn't really have the performance to back that up. But this particular version seems to be above 50% quite comfortably, so actually a playable version of Blood Death Knight. At number 14 we have another deck that makes use of E.T.C Band Manager and has a band included, and that is the Quest Ramp Druid. Whether E.T.C is an improvement to this deck, well, you can debate about that. The list that doesn't run E.T.C and runs 2 copies of Feral Rage is within the margin of error, so I cannot reliably say which list is better. But hey, you probably want to play with E.T.C. I mean, it's new, so why not play a list with E.T.C if the performance doesn't differ that much? Quest Ramp Druid has very strong inevitabilities. The quest itself gives it some survivability against some of the more aggressive decks that do run out of damage, and it's just the king of the end game. But there are also plenty of decks that don't run out of damage very easily, and they can just challenge Quest Ramp Druid pretty hard still. At number 13 we have Curse Imp Warlock. Curse Imp Warlock, it's the deck that doesn't change. This is still the same list month after month after month. It's the same list, it's always the same list. It's stronger against slower decks, it's weaker against aggressive decks, depending on the mix in the meta, depends the position of Curse Imp Warlock, but somehow it always finds a way to be at least somewhat viable. And at number 12 we have Enrage Warrior. Last week I thought that okay, Enrage Warrior, it kind of looks okay, but the statistics are so low that I just can't really recommend one. But this seems to be the best list of Enrage Warrior around at the moment, fire list. It's quite alright. It has a bunch of good matchups. Sadly, those good matchups tend not to be the most popular decks, and the bad matchups tend to be more popular than the good ones, which keeps Enrage Warrior a little bit lower, even though the deck itself is not bad. As you can tell, there's plenty of matchups where you really love to be playing Enrage Warrior. They're just not common enough on the ladder right now. And at number 11 we have Big Spell Mage. Big Spell Mage living its last moments because most of this deck is going to rotate out of standard format when the next expansion comes, but it just keeps performing. Adequate performance day in, day out. And at number 10 we have some of that innovation that I have been hoping for, a new iteration of Beast Hunter. There's still the old-fashioned Beast Hunter list that has cut K9 I featured that last week, runs Pope of Quel'Thalas, Lancelot Matheron. But there's also this list. This list doesn't run Renatal, it's a 30 card list. It makes use of the secret package for the early game, so that's a little bit of something different. And then it makes use of Faithful Companions with that King Crush with Lord Matheron. Just a fun new style of playing Beast Hunter. We haven't had one for a while, so this is probably the list that I'm most excited about this week, and it seems to be performing quite alright on the ladder. That said, Beast Hunter is not even the best Hunter archetype, because Shockspitter Hunter is just better. Yeah, brand those Shockspitters while you still can. Bran is probably going to leave core set, that has been hinted at by Blizzard multiple times, but it's still around for now, and you can Shockspit all you want. And at number 8 we have Imp Warlock with No Fins Impossible from the miniset, and Imp Warlock has just been a steady performer. Right now it looks like adding Sylvanas to the deck, cutting one copy of Murloc seems to be slightly superior option, so if you have Sylvanas available, I recommend that. If you don't, you can continue playing with Murloc, that is still a fine option. At number 7 we have Spell Demon Hunter. I probably should have listed this deck already last week. The problem with Spell Demon Hunter is just that it's kind of like Fel Demon Hunter, except that it uses Soul Eater's Kite and it's worse. Spell Demon Hunter is better in almost every matchup. There's like 1 or 2 matchups where Spell Demon Hunter is better than Fel Demon Hunter, so it's sort of obsolete. But if you do want to play with the Skite, playing with the Skite is possible, so for completeness sake, and I mean number 7, that's not a bad rank. I probably should have included this already last week, but here it is. If you want to play with the Skite, yeah, you can do that. You don't have to play with the pure Fel package alone. And at number 6 we have Pure Paladin, the same list as last week. One of the premium aggressive decks in the game, just a fun deck with the Purator. And number 5 is Aggro Mage. Aggro Mage has one real thing going for it, and that thing is its strong matchup against Undead Priest, because there are not many decks that are good against Undead Priest. Sadly, Aggro Mage also has a big bunch of weaknesses, and that kind of dims its performance. But if you really hate Undead Priests, Aggro Mage is one fine option to play against them. And at number 4 we have the best Demon Hunter deck in the game, and that's the Fel Demon Hunter. You don't hide your minions in your weapon, you just want a lot more spell damage minions than you can hide, and that's how you just blow things apart. And right now the third best deck in the game is Frost Death Knight. Last week I still thought that maybe Frost Death Knight is actually the best deck in the game still, even though it hasn't really gotten much lately. And this is exactly the same list that was last week, but the meta has changed. The meta has slightly shifted into fashion where Frost Death Knight's best matchups are not as common and its weaker matchups are a little bit more common. So it's still a great deck. It's a wonderful deck, but right now I would only rank it as number 3. Whereas the second best deck in the game is Unholy Death Knight. And why is Unholy Death Knight now better than Frost Death Knight? The main reason is Undead Priest. Undead Priest is super common. Frost Death Knight has been losing its matchup against Undead Priest a little bit. Like it was 50-50 and now it's more like 49-51, so Frost Death Knight might even be ever so tiny unfavored against Undead Priest, whereas Unholy Death Knight is strong against Undead Priest. And that meta shift explains why Frost Death Knight has fallen a little bit and Unholy Death Knight has risen. And finally, the best deck in the game at the moment is Undead Priest. Right now we have a very diverse meta. There's no clear meta tyrant. Like Undead Priest, okay, it has a bunch of good matchups, it also has some 50-50 matchups, and it has clear weaknesses against Unholy Death Knight and against Aggro Mage. This list seems to be the best Undead Priest list around. It's running Astalor, it's running Mind Eaters. Astalor and Mind Eaters are actually some of the worst cards in this list, but they're still like better than Riddle Skin Zombies, I guess, so this is the type of Undead Priest you want to be playing if you play Undead Priest at the moment. And there's no clear tyrant, so I mean you don't have to play Undead Priest. There are plenty of other good decks. This video featured 15 decks, which is the most that I have ever featured in a video. All of these decks have above 50% win rate. The top 4, top 5 decks of these are really strong, of course. But yeah, it's a pretty diverse meta, so play what you like and enjoy. Thank you for watching. Click like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and a special thanks to all of my Patreon supporters, YouTube members and Twitch subscribers who make all of these videos possible.